All right, welcome. This is Jacob and Margaret from Marble Hill Baptist Church, and we're going to continue our 12-week study of John. This is out of the Knowing the Bible series, and week 2, Prologue, the Incarnate Word. If you're in the group, you should have gotten a book. If you would like one, and there's plenty of places to buy them online. They're everywhere. So we're going to go ahead and continue on and discuss some questions at the end.
All right, so we are pretty much just going through the book, how it's laid out. So we're starting with the place of the passage. In here, we see that there are 3 major themes that John introduces, and he introduces that Jesus as the life, the light, and the truth, believers as God's children, and the world's rejection of Jesus. We're focusing today being the prologue or the introduction to the book of John is only going to be the scripture verses of John chapter 1, verses 1 through 18. So we'll be looking at all those scriptures, and this is just the place of the passage, and it says from the very first sentence, John proclaims that Jesus is the eternal, pre-existent Word, the one-of-a-kind Son of the Father, the Son who is himself God. John really wants to point that out throughout his book, so he doesn't do the Christmas story. He skips straight into, well, I shouldn't say skip because he actually goes back to the beginning, but pointing out that Jesus is God, the Creator.
Right. Big picture. Big picture is really just showing how the promise was kept by Jesus, or God, if you will. Talking about how Jesus is God, how he will take on flesh, and how this person will fulfill all these Old Testament prophecies. So we've titled it Promise Keeper, much like the song Waymaker talks about.
So if you like music like I do, something like that sticks out, that as I'm studying John, I'm seeing the themes in John in the song Waymaker, because he likes to talk about Jesus being a light in the darkness as well. It's one of the major themes he also sticks with.
All right. In the beginning.
John 1, verses 1 through 5. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it.
So this verse, or these verses, show us that Jesus is God, that he is in the beginning before creation, and nothing could be created without him.
I just got to ask a question.
Yes.
Have you ever tried to hide a light in a dark room? I don't know, a movie theater, and you pull your phone out and you feel like everyone can see you, right?
I see, yeah, come on.
So I do like the illustration where the darkness has not overcome it, because no matter how dark it is, actually the darker it is, the brighter the light shines, really, the more noticeable it is. But I like the idea that no matter how dark it is, or the darker it is, the light cannot be overcome by the darkness.
True, because you can have a flashlight like right here and it won't blind you, but pitch black outside, and then you can't see for like
So Jesus was that phone in the movie theater. He stood out.
All right, witness. John 1, 6 through 8. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as a witness to bear witness about the light, that all might believe through him. He was not the light, but came to bear witness about the light.
Okay, so this is talking about John the Baptist. John the Baptist was the one who came and told about Jesus before he was actually known in his ministry. We want to clarify here that John the Baptist was not the writer of the Gospel of John. That was actually the Apostle John, who also has other names. He may be called John, the son of Zebedee, John, one of the sons of thunder. There's another John Mark, that wrote the Gospel of Mark. So we don't want to confuse him with him either. But we want to see that the Apostle John is the one who wrote, but he's pointing out a prophecy being fulfilled through John the Baptist, that there would be a forerunner, someone who would prophesy about Christ as he came.
On a side note, one thing you got to be careful about is names are popular. Names catch on. You might find somebody that has a different name today. In about 10 years, everybody names their kid that. So same thing in the Bible. Names are popular during different time periods. So don't be confused by that. So the world. Let's go there.
John 1, 9 through 13, the true light, which gives light to everyone, was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made through him, yet the world did not know him. He came to his own, and his own people did not receive him. But to all who did receive him, who believed in his name, he gave the right to become the children of God, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God.
So the Son of God comes to the world and gives you the opportunity to be a child of God. So that's like this rich dude going around and saying, hey, you want to be adopted by my dad? We got plenty of room. Come to my house. You need a home. And all you have to do is say, I'm in. I accept. That says right there, whomever believed in his name. So, it's very awesome that Jesus would want us to take part, an equal part in his glory.
And I love that we're still in the first few verses of John,
Yeah.
and John is making sure you know how to become a child of God right off the bat.
All right. Word. All right. John 1, 14 through 18. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we have seen his glory as of the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. John bore witness about him and cried out, this was he of whom I said, he who comes after me ranks before me, because he was before me. For from his fullness we have all received grace upon grace. For the law was given through Moses. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God, the only God, who is at the Father's side. He has made him known.
All right, the Word became flesh. That is so huge right there to even consider that God stepped down from his glory and he put on flesh. That's such a big truth right there. I had to look up myself what Word was referring to here, Jesus being called the Word. They take you back to the original Greek, which is logos. And basically at the time that this was written, again, we mentioned last week that John's a little bit different in that he wrote this gospel later than the others, and Jerusalem had already been destroyed, causing the Jews and the Gentiles to be mixed a lot more, because the Jews are now having to spread out and live other places because Jerusalem's been destroyed. So what we're seeing here is the word logos was actually a term that would have resonated with both Jews and Gentiles. It was meaning that he was a bridge. The Jews could use that as a word that they were familiar with from the Jewish scriptures, as God fulfilling his word through Jesus. He was the word in the flesh. And then also those who were Gentiles, or the Greeks, they were being able to understand it as Jesus being a bridge. That's what the logos meant to them, is that he was a bridge between us and God, which is also an amazing thing to think about, him taking on flesh.
Until we did this study, I never considered looking up the definition of the word word.
This is true.
What does word mean?
What does it really mean?
It's a bunch of letters. That's what word is. But no, I never did, and that was definitely not what I expected. All right. Discussion questions. We're doing 3. There's a lot more in your books. If there's one that really stands out to you, you want to know more, or hey, like this blew my mind, we can talk about it when we do our Zoom call with our class here in a little while. If not, you can message us privately if you want to talk about it, or in public form, or we're going to upload this to YouTube, and you can drop comments, and hopefully we can respond back to them. So yeah, we're going to go over certain ones. If there's others you want to talk about, or if there's one that came up that's not in the book, we can talk about it too. All right.
So we have 3 questions, but you're not limited to these 3 questions. If you look at in the back of your book, or in the back of your chapter, sorry, and every chapter is going to have these same 3 sections towards the end. So you have gospel glimpses, whole Bible connections, and theological soundings. We tried to pick a question that would go along with each one of these sections so you get all of it. So like we said, if you have another question, that's fine, but these are the ones we're focusing on for our discussion on Zoom later. So if you look at these questions in those sections, you should get a little more detail. So first one, gospel glimpses. What do verses 9 through 13 teach about how to become a child of God? Where do you see God's grace in these verses?
All right. Whole Bible connections. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to mess up 2 names in here because it's hard to do their plural, their possessive, that grammar word. What is superior about Jesus's ministry over Moses's ministry? What did Jesus accomplish that Moses could not accomplish?
And theological soundings. John 1:14 makes clear that when John speaks of the Word, he is speaking of Jesus. Thus, John begins his gospel by providing a lofty portrait of Jesus, revealing that Jesus is God, giving glimpses of the Trinitarian nature of God, and teaching that Jesus was crucially involved in the very creation of the universe. List everything we learn about Jesus in the opening verses 1 through 5. So theological, big word. Theology itself actually means just the study of God. So when we hit these theological sounding sections, we're just digging a little bit deeper into the nature of God and who he is. So don't be overwhelmed by that.
All right.
Or do be, because God's pretty overwhelming. But outside of God being overwhelming, don't be overwhelmed by the language.
So John, week 2 out of 12. Normally we would close in prayer right here, but instead we're going to let you know that we have been praying for you, and if you have any prayer requests, again, message them to us, put them in the comments.
Let us know on Zoom later. We'll pray together.
Things that we have prayed for specifically is that Jesus would be our great physician. What is a physician? It's a doctor. He heals people, cures people, and keeps them well before they get sick. We've been praying for that. We've been praying for just to kind of go back to normal. This is great. We're very thankful, and we thank God all the time for Zoom and Prezi and YouTube, but we also tell them that we miss face-to-face a lot. So if you got any needs, please put them in the comments and let us know.
Love you guys. See you later.